Hello everyone. In case you didn't read the description in this little video, I will share it with you right now, which is a big question. Maybe some of you can connect to it. Have you ever had this experience where you've worked really hard for something or you've built something in your life, in whatever form and for whatever period of time, and just as you think like you're at the top of the mountain and you're doing so well and you've built something that you can finally enjoy, the rug gets pulled out from underneath you and everything kind of crashes and you're left wondering what in the world happened. And I've experienced this many times in my life. And the first time that I experienced it, for many years afterward, I thought to myself that the reason that I was experiencing it was because God was trying to humble me. Like maybe I had worked really hard to become somebody. And while that was all well and good, I had also taken on the ego of that person. And maybe God was trying to remind me not to have an ego. And so therefore everything was like burnt to the ground of what I did and all my work. And just like that, I had to sort of start over. And for years, I kind of carried that as the lesson that I needed to learn. Like I needed to have humility and keep my head down and work and not enjoy what I did and not get any kind of sense of like self-satisfaction for what I did. And aside from the lesson of not becoming someone who's self-inflated, what I discovered was that it was a really unfair story that I had labeled on God that I was sure was true. And years later, someone said to me, well, how do you know that that whole thing that happened wasn't God protecting you from something, that could have happened? And so that was like a whole new light. Oh, maybe God was trying to protect me from something. Like that was like a much more compassionate option. And then the third thing happened, which was my third insight went from a place of like, oh, God wants me to be punished or put in my place for being haughty, to a place of God's trying to protect me. And now I'm at a third place in this whole evolution of insights, which I will share with you. But I first want to tell you this incredible story. There's a guy named Aron Ralston. This is like the most amazing, craziest story I've ever heard. He was a hiker and he was in Utah. And he was, I guess, hiking on some canyon in Utah. And some boulders, I guess it was like the worst possible scenario. Some boulders fell and an 800-pound boulder fell and onto his arm, and he was stuck in place with his arm completely smashed between the rocks. There's actually a picture of it. It's graphic. And for 5 days he was stuck there, 127 hours, and he eventually amputated his own arm in order to save himself. But something that he talks about is that he spent the first hour of this experience just furious at what happened. Like he just couldn't believe that this big rock had fallen. He was hitting the rock, no biblical references here, right? He was cursing at it, and he was just really, really, angry about the fact that this rock had fallen on him. And then after about an hour, he decided he was going to stop. And he shares that the word stop is an acronym for him. S is for stop, like just breathe. T is for, what was T for? Think. Like emotions aside, let me think straight for a second. O is for options. Let me think of some options. And P is make a plan. So he did that. He stopped being angry and he started to think about options that he could do. And his first thought was he was going to ration his food and drink because he had 2 burritos left and some water, and he didn't know how long he was going to be under this rock. He didn't know he was going to be there for over 5 days. So the first thing he decided to do was ration his food and drink. He then decided he had a pocket knife in his back pocket. Maybe he was going to carve the rock in a way that would dislodge his arm. He also another idea that he had was like, he knows there was like a slot above the boulders above his eye, above him, because there was a few boulders that had fallen. Maybe he could somehow angle his cell phone so that the light that came off of the phone would alert someone to the fact that he was stuck underneath it. And then yet another option he thought of was like, maybe he would rig up some ropes. He was like an engineer of some kind. And he thought maybe if he could just get some ropes lined up by the boulders, he could climb his way out. Anyway, he said though, that from the beginning of the accident, a voice inside of him said, you're going to have to cut off your arm. And he replied out loud, day one, into this voice saying, I don't want to cut off my arm. And the inner voice inside of him answered him back and said, you're going to have to cut off your arm. And it's just really interesting. He points out, like, we know intuitively that we need to change or adapt in order to survive, and yet we resist it so much. And he ended up, he says, not losing his hand, but gaining his life back. He shifted from focusing on adrenaline and getting an adventure to building up himself from the inside. And he ended up leveling up in a way that he would have never been able to before. And so that leads me to answer the original question. I don't believe God is trying to punish us or send us a strong punitive message when things burn to the ground. And I don't believe that even if it's a matter of protection, because I think that God has ample ways of protecting us without it being painful. I think that there's something really in there where our challenges sometimes do look like a match that's burnt, that's just completely burnt up the forest that we built for our lives, and it looks like full-on destruction. But really what it is a clearing for a new life that we are being tasked to build. A new life that we never asked for, that we didn't see coming, but that we are leveling up. And that, you know, the reason that it happens just when we're getting comfortable is because we've kind of completed that level and now we're up to the next level. And that feeling of empowerment that we've just leveled up and that we can congratulate ourselves on this next level. And yes, it's going to take change and adapting. And there's massive resistance in that. But that is what we're being tasked with. We're tasked to be big and we're tasked to be great. And I just found that message really empowering, and I hope you did too. And yeah, hope you're all well. Bye.